Hi, this is Peter Lindsay, Director of the Lion Recovery Fund, speaking to you from Liwonde National Park in Malawi. This is a site where lion recovery is happening as we speak. LRF contributed to the reintroduction of lions here in 2018, and they're increasing already, and there's a lot of recovery potential here, which is exciting. I'm really excited to be here today for the WCN Expo to have the opportunity to showcase some of the projects that we're supporting and some of the themes that have emerged from recent LRF granting. So sit back, grab yourself a coffee and enjoy. I think you're going to like this. The decline in lion numbers caught many people by surprise. They're a species that's common in many of Africa's most famous protected areas and very apparent and visible. And so one can come and visit Africa without getting any sense that the king of the beasts is in such a state. Over the last 25 years, we estimate that numbers have declined by about half. And over the last 50 or 75 years, the numbers have declined really precipitously, and the pace of that decline has increased.
The threats facing lions can be categorized as those that result in the death of lions themselves. So examples of this include the retaliatory killing of lions by livestock herders in protection of their stock, cultural killing of lions or rites of passage type killings that happen in certain parts of the continent. There's a growing issue of poaching of lions for their body parts, and the bycatch of lions in traps and snares set by bushmeat poachers is a real significant source of mortality for lions in many areas. Then there are threats that cause the reduction in prey numbers for lions. We see that the density of lions is very closely related to the density of prey. So as soon as prey numbers decline, lion numbers tend to decline. So the principal cause is bushmeat poaching, but also issues such as competition between wild and domestic herbivores is a big issue. And then lastly, there are threats that cause the destruction of the habitat upon which lions and their prey depend. There are a number of factors that exacerbate the threats facing lions. For example, conservation in the continent is facing acute and chronic underfunding, and this manifests, for example, in dire shortages of funding for the management of protected areas, to the point where the vast majority of them are effectively or are undermanaged or even unmanaged. And in addition, the continent is facing very rapid human population growth. The population of the continent is expected to double by 2050 and potentially even quadruple by the end of the century. And this is going to cause a reduction in the space available for lions and other species, and also an amplification of pretty much all of the threats that lions and other wildlife are facing. The Lion Recovery Fund was established in 2017 to tackle the threats facing lions, their landscapes, and their prey. The fund was established following a science-based strategy, and the idea is that we raise as much funding as we possibly can. We take 100% of the funds raised with zero overheads being taken off, and we invest them in the best ideas out there for conserving lions, their prey, and their landscapes. The fund is made more effective by the fact that it's guided by science, but the funding is flexible. We are willing to fund things that other funders won't. For example, we're looking into the fund is associated with low admin, so grantees can focus on conservation in the field rather than long application forms and reporting. And the LRF is willing to fund things that many other funders won't, and to provide flexible funding so that it is as useful as possible for grantees in the field.
It's been a rollercoaster 4 years since the formation of the Lion Recovery Fund. During this time, the fund has emerged as a highly effective and efficient means of channeling funding to the field for lion conservation, but also for protected area management, community conservation, and for channeling support for tackling the illegal wildlife trade. In addition, we found that our grantees have been highly effective at leveraging LRF grants to unlock other funding. And to date, this has been at a more than 1-to-1 ratio, so that for every dollar invested by the LRF, more than another dollar of other funding has been unlocked.
Today, I'm going to talk to you about several of the themes that have emerged through LRF granting, the kinds of projects that we've been supporting. Perhaps the theme that we're most passionate about at the Lion Recovery Fund is the notion of growing the conservation footprint. Recent research that's in press as we speak indicates that effective management for Africa's savanna protected areas is limited to just 10% of Africa's protected areas, with approximately 80% of conservation areas in a state of either failure or decline. This is because Africa set aside such a massive protected area estate, but is faced with competing developmental and budgetary challenges. So as conservationists, if we cannot help support the expansion of effective management into landscapes that currently lack it, in the context of rapid human population growth and growing conservation threats, we will simply lose many of those areas. So supporting the growth of the conservation footprint and instilling conservation management in conservation areas that currently lack it is the single most important thing that we can do through the Lion Recovery Fund. And we have several excellent examples of LRF funding supporting the growth of the conservation footprint. And the first and one of the most exciting is the Chinco Project in Eastern Central African Republic, which is undertaken by African Parks, which is currently the LRF's largest single grantee. And here's a video depicting some of their work. Another exciting example of LRF funding supporting expansion of the conservation footprint is in the Zambezi Delta of Mozambique. This is an absolutely pristine wilderness that many of you may never heard of. It is incredibly beautiful with unbelievably dense populations of wildlife. Lions were reintroduced there by Zambezi Delta Conservation in 2018 and have started to increase very rapidly. LRF funding is going to help them expand the footprint of their effective management and thus enable the early gains in lion population increase to be expanded upon, and this area has real potential to turn into a lion stronghold of regional and even continental significance. Another key theme of LRF granting has been kickstarting new conservation initiatives, and this speaks to the willingness of the Lion Recovery Fund to take chances and be the early backer of emerging conservation organizations. And this is important because if we're willing to take the step and back organizations as they emerge, then what we find is that other funders rapidly come to the party, but someone has to take that first step. And we're proud that we've done that with a number of conservation groups, and here's some examples. A great example of this was our support for Musikesi Conservation, which is a conservation initiative that was launched by a tourism outfit in the beautiful Kafue National Park in Zambia.
Musikesi Conservation works with Zambia's Department of National Parks and Wildlife in the Kafue National Park. We established in 2018 in response to an increasing trend and severity of bush meat poaching across the region. Our initial focus has been directed towards traditional boots-on-the-ground law enforcement and anti-poaching, which involves regular patrols searching for the signs of illegal activities, including poaching camps, drying racks, and wire snares. Musikesi Conservation employs no less than 32 scouts, and these teams regularly encounter these signs, including poachers themselves. But in the last 2 years, we have seen a significant reduction in illegal activities, and this is despite the impacts of COVID. This is in no small part due to the funding and support received from the Lion Recovery Fund, which has also enabled us to put an aircraft in the sky. Whilst our conservation efforts are directed towards all species and habitats, we do use large carnivores, and in particular lion, as a measure of success. And we would certainly consider an ecosystem without lion and other such carnivores as desperately incomplete. And this is a reality we could face without the necessary interventions. As a result of our efforts, large carnivores are returning and thriving under an increasing prey base, and funding from the Lion Recovery Fund has enabled Musikesi Conservation to unlock further funding, including for our research undertakings, and this has been particularly important throughout the course of this pandemic. It has been over 18 months since we have knowingly lost any large carnivores to snaring, and this can be seen in the growing numbers and recorded sightings of all large carnivores. And indeed, having no less than 3 packs of wild dog denning in the area is a testament to this. Together we are creating a veritable Eden, a safe haven where wildlife can survive and thrive, and where tourism has a real opportunity to contribute to conservation and the socio-economic uplifting of our surrounding communities. But it doesn't stop here. Increasing population pressures and encroachment are highlighting the importance of conservation and the need to increase our efforts. Every team, asset and undertaking is an absolute necessity, and the funding to maintain and deliver this support will go a long way.
Another example of a theme of LRF granting in recent months has been the provision of COVID emergency grants. So the COVID-19 pandemic has affected conservation in Africa in 2 principal ways. The first has been through a significant reduction in funding, largely due to the collapse of the tourism industry. And then secondly, we've also seen an increase in certain threats, particularly the bushmeat trade. So this has created a situation where there's more pressure on wildlife and less funding to deal with it. So we've provided a number of COVID emergency grants to help out. So examples are enabling conservation groups to keep rangers on and make sure they stay in the field and don't get furloughed. And then another example has been some innovative efforts to use furloughed tourism staff to deliver conservation services. For example, our partner Conservation South Luangwa has hired furloughed guides to undertake DeSnaring patrols and also to give game drives to community members who normally only see wildlife in the context of human-wildlife conflict. A particularly good example of the impact of our COVID emergency grants has come from our support for Frankfurt Zoological Society in the Serengeti. Watch this.
The DeSnaring program is very effective because it takes the bush knowledge of an ex-poacher combined with a Tanapa ranger who carries the authority to operate in the park, and together they form a very strong team that knows exactly where to go to look for snares or camps or where poaching activities is happening.
Kazi ya ujangili nimeifanya ndani ya Serengeti kwa muda wa miaka 15. Nimesimama kazi hiyo kufanya kazi ya ujangili kwa sababu Frankfurt walianzisha mradi wa kokoba. Tumeelewa kwamba kumbe tulikuwa tunaharibu kuua wanyama. Na sasa hatuui wanyama tena, tunawalinda. Inatusaidia kupata kipato kwa ajili ya familia.
Mostly it's wildebeest and zebra that is being harvested with snare lines, although it kills indiscriminately across the line. Almost all the species in the park, elephants, lion, hyena, everything is affected if they walk into a snare line.
Sio kwamba kazi yake kubwa ni kufungua waya tu. Tunaangalia dalili iliyopo, tunafuata nyayo. Tunahakikisha na wale jangili tumewapata. Kama hatujapata kambi yao, tunawawekea mtego, tunarudi tunavizia jioni. Wakija tunakamata.
Although not many teams, at maximum we have 3 DeSnaring teams in the field. They've collected over 40,000 snares, demolished many camps, released hundreds of animals from snares alive, and has disrupted snaring and poaching in the park.
Another key theme of LRF granting has been supporting emerging conservation leaders. We're a big believer that it is critical to increase the representation of indigenous Africans in conservation efforts in Africa, because this will increase the resonance of conservation messaging, both with local communities and also with African governments. So good examples are our support for the Wasima project led by Jonathan Kuyega, who's the chap in the white shirt on this slide. Our support for More Angels and Biza to tackle human-lion conflict in Zimbabwe. Our support for Louis Nguluka, who works to tackle the bushmeat trade in Zambia. And most recently, our support for Deo Tarimo, who's started a lion conservation project in Mkomazi National Park in Tanzania. Make no mistake, the road ahead is tough for Africa's lions. Over the next 2 to 4 human generations, we expect a particularly tough period where human populations are growing, human densities are becoming higher and higher, space for wildlife is reduced, threats on wildlife are going to be increased. At the same time, Africa will continue to face governance challenges and corruption. And so this is the period where we have to knuckle down and really try our hardest to shepherd Africa's lions and other wildlife through this effective bottleneck. When we get through that period, things will get better, I have no doubt. However, it's important not to lose sight of the real reasons for optimism. Africa has a truly vast protected area estate. We have more than enough land that we need to secure the African lion as a species. Political will for conservation on the continent is rock solid. Some countries more than others, but in general it's really impressive. And the fact is, lions can recover and breed very quickly under the right conditions. If you protect them, their prey and their habitats, they can really increase quickly. And a good example of this is from the Zambezi Delta that I mentioned earlier, where 24 lions were reintroduced in 2018, and they already number over 70 individuals, which is just staggering and shows what can be achieved. And excitingly, we have the conservation interventions that we know work. We just need the funding to deepen them and to scale them up.
I just want to say a huge thank you to every single one of our supporters. Your funding, as you can see from the presentation, is making a difference. 100% of every donation gets to the field, and I make it my personal, professional duty to make sure that the funds are invested as effectively as possible. I want to make a particular shout out to John Ayers and the Ayers Wildcat Conservation Trust. They've just pledged a significant multi-year grant that is going to provide an amazing platform from which we can grow the fund. So big thanks to John. Have a great day, everyone. Thanks for taking the time to listen. And please continue supporting us, continue following us, and let's see what we can do to save lions in the coming year. Cheers.